Hey y'all, how you doing today? Um, Back out here in the garage again. I'm working on the 360 again. This time, um, last time, let me explain something. Last time I went and I checked my bearing clearances. I used plastic gauge, and my bearing clearances were a little off. And then I got thinking about it, and I thought, I've got a pair of I've got a set of micrometers, the vernier caliper really. And I thought, well, I can pull the crank back out. I mean, now's a good time to do it. I mean, I don't have any pistons or rods in it right now, so now's a good time to do this. And nobody's needing me to do anything else, so I'll just go ahead and do that. I've already got one of them off. I've got number four off. Number four main cap. I've got it sitting right over there. As far as this thing, like spinning over and everything like that, it's perfect. But um, just wasn't crazy about the bearing clearance number. I wrote everything down like I normally do when I build an engine. I write everything down. I just didn't like it, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to take all the bearing caps off. And then I'm going to go and pull the crank out, set it down. I'm going to put the bearing caps back on, take measurements of the crank and the bearings clearances with the bearing caps torqued down. So that's basically how it's done. I should have done this before I went this far, but it's not that hard to go back. So, okay. Anyway, um, like I said, I've got everything broken loose, and I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to come back and show you some more in just a minute. Okay, y'all. Um, got the crank out, and right there it is. And old car seats make a pretty good place to put a crankshaft. Who knew? All right, here we go. We got our bearing caps back on. Um, Now, I don't like to use an impact when I'm taking them off or putting them on. Um, those main cap bolts, they're very stout, but I don't want to put them through any extra undue stress by using an impact on them. So, what I'm going to do, I'll set you all, or try to set you all up here somewhere so you can see pretty good what I'm doing. And then I'm going to run these down and take some measurements. So here we go. Maybe I can get something worked out here. Excuse me. All right. Now, yeah, it's best to just use like just regular hand tools. Also, it's probably a really good idea to take yourself something like a hammer and not really just beat the hell out of this thing. But I have this plastic rubber mallet. That's the best way to do it. Just run these down. Just give them a couple little taps just to seat them down all the way into. They have a little, well, let's see. I'm trying to do it. They have a little place right here where they seat in the block. So now you can run them down, run the bolts down, but I just like doing that. Now you notice I'm just running these down till they stop. I am not torquing these down with the speed handle here, okay? That's all right. That's not what I'm doing. I just run them down, they stop, that's it. Then I go get my torque wrench, start torquing these guys down. And that's what I'm going to do next. And I've got to go get my torque wrench and get my book, and I'll show you a little bit more. Okay, y'all. Rotate the camera down here just a little, or get it to. There we go. All right, now I've got my old school style torque wrench out. I've got it set to the correct amount of torque. I'm going to start in the middle. I like to start in the middle and work my way out. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, here's something that is very, very, very important. A couple of things that are really super important. One, get yourself a really good torque wrench. Spend the extra money. If you're going to do this work, you're going to do this work on a lot of engines and stuff like that, just go ahead and do it, okay? You'll be better off in the long run, okay? Secondly, this is a very sensitive tool. Do not beat and bang around with this thing. Don't use it as a hammer. Don't break stuff loose with it. Just use it like a torque wrench. Whether you've got the clicker type, you've got the needle type, this kind right here, whatever. Just use it like for its intended purpose. Okay, that's it. And another thing, when you're pulling on these, you want to pull on them in a more graceful manner than some people. Okay, you want to pull, you want to have a nice, even pull, even if you don't go down all the way. Like that time I didn't go, I went to like 60 foot-pounds. So now, okay, I'm just easing that thing down. You'll notice I've got one hand on the block steadying it. I got one hand on the torque wrench, and my engine stand's moving just a little bit. So I'm going to put, there we go. Now you notice I did not jerk or, push or shove on this thing really, really hard or fast. Slow, even torque. That's what you want to do. You don't want that rapid torque. You want a slow, even torque on that. Okay? Because you want to pull that bearing cap down nice and even. You don't want to pull one side down and then the other. You want to pull it down even. Okay? You want nice, even torque to secure that. See, when you're torquing these bolts, any bolt, any fastener, you're putting stretch in there. The bolt is physically stretching just a little bit. And so it's important that you do that correctly. It's important that you go and you torque these down in the correct manner. Because if you don't, you get incorrect readings, and then the cap could be loose, or it could be too tight. It could distort the cap, cause bearing problems, and just on and on and on and on and on. So, do yourself a huge favor. Take care of these things. They're sensitive pieces of equipment. Get a really good one. Unload it when you're done using it. Okay, that's my school. That's my idea on it. Some people don't. I do. That's the way it is. Done deal. And go by the specs and use it. But use it in a more sensitive manner than just taking it and just I guess doing a ham-fisted approach on stuff. Go through and just easily, gently, gracefully torque the bolts down. See, my stand moved just a little bit, but it's important to keep the stand from moving so you can get that torque down like you're supposed to. And check your wrench every once in a while. Make sure the needle hasn't moved, the setting hasn't moved, or anything like that. Okay? So we'll go through here just like this. Nice even pull. Yep, that's what you want. Now I'm pulling it to me. You can push if you like, if it's more comfortable, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and, I like to do the pull, but, make sure your socket is on the bolt securely and squarely. Make sure you're using the right socket, the right size, but also make sure the socket is pretty well clean inside. It's not full of dirt. If you're putting the engine together, the last thing you want is a bunch of dirt going in it from your tools. It's one of those little details, if you're not careful, wind up with a bunch of dirt in your engine, and that's never fun. So, anyway, all right, we're going to torque this last one. Then I'm going to take some measurements. And I'm going to come back and show you a little bit more. Okay, y'all. Got out my micrometer. And so, now this is not a very expensive one. You can pick these up. A lot of auto parts stores sell them. That's where I got this one. Okay. Yes, I would much rather have one that has the round dial and has the gauge and all of that, but this is what I got. This is what I'm working with. That's what I'm going to use. Okay, here's what I've done. I went through, I measured all of these, but I'm going to measure one just so you all can see what I'm doing here, okay? Now, I like to do this like this, up and down. You want to do this, try to be careful. You don't want to scratch the bearing, which you can do if you're not careful. Okay. There's our measurement. .804. That's actually a little bit loose of a measurement. I measured all these earlier. They measured out at 2.802. This furthest one back, number 5, measured out 2.801. Okay, now I measured my crank over here. And there's James over there, cat scanning everything. I measured the crank main journals, the main journals, okay, not the rods, but the mains. And they measured out at, so I can tell you here, 2.809, all of them. So, and I have, my measurement is 2.809 to 2.810, or 8105. So it's 2.8095 to 2.8105. Okay? Now I could go and say that's 200, 200,000 and blah 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 blah. But I'm keeping it simple for you all and for me too. Okay? Hey, I'll admit it. I'm not fantastic at using one of these things, but I get by. So, I did the measuring, I did the math, and I came up with, there's my clearance numbers, 6, 6, 5, 6, and 8. So, that I feel really good about because that is well within the specs that it calls for here. So, 5 to 20 thousandths is the specs it calls for. And so that looks really, really good to me. This is looking great. All right, so next I'm going to take main bearing caps back off, and I'm going to set them over here where James is at right now. And then I'm going to go and get the crank ready, put it back in. Crank is actually pretty well ready to go back in. I'm just going to put a little more lubrication on the bearings and on the crank. All right, so, all right. Anyway, here we go. All right. Let me get you all set up here so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I know that for some of you all, this is probably going to be above your head, or this is stuff that you're never going to do, or stuff you never want to do. But there are some of you out there, you may have some questions about all of this. You may have some serious questions about it, and you want to know a little bit more about all of this than just being, you know, well, I'll take it down to somebody, have somebody else rebuild it. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not gonna give you any grief for that. But me, personally, I'm more one of those people, I'd rather do it myself when it comes to rebuilding engines. It just makes, you know, I know what's in there, and I enjoy doing it. So that's a good part. That's a good thing to take part in. All right. Remember what I was saying earlier about cleaning your socket that you use? I just cleaned this. There's the dirt that was was in the socket. So now, fortunately, none of this fell out on the engine, but it fell out into the engine. But it could have. So that's what I'm talking about, the little details. You know, you need to keep things as clean as humanly possible because you don't want this stuff falling down in the engine. No matter how hard you try, though, you're probably going to get a little bit in there. You're probably going to see a little speck or a little piece of lint or something like that. It's just something that's almost unavoidable. Go ahead and start breaking all these back loose. So, all right, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to get all of these back loose, and then I'm going to get my white grease for these, and I'm going to start lubricating them and lubricating the crank and getting it back in here. Okay? I'll be right back in a minute.